driving to work this morning, and I thought I'd just record a video for you. As I'm driving, a lot of times I get bored, and I like to kind of meditate and think. I can't read or study or anything like that when I'm driving, but I can certainly think about things and talk. So I thought I would talk to you a little bit this morning on my drive, and I've been meditating on Psalm 15 this week. I've been working on a little video for it. It's the psalm that begins, it says, who can live in God's house or God's tent or his tabernacle, whichever translation you may be reading about. And it says, who can live on God's holy mountain? Obviously, the writer of the psalm is asking a rhetorical question. Who is worthy to be with God in such proximity, in such closeness? And it's a great question, because then the psalmist starts to answer it. And this is what he says. I'm going to read just a phrase here from JPS. JPS is a Jewish Publication Society translation. And it says, he that walketh uprightly and worketh righteousness and speaketh the truth in his heart. Now, I realize that's a little bit of an archaic translation. Obviously, this is JPS, and this is the early edition of JPS from early 1900s. But you get the idea of what it says. Many English translations that you might be familiar with will say basically the same. What it says in Hebrew, however, it says Cholech Tamim. The first phrase, Cholech Tamim, means he who walks literally perfectly. It means walking perfectly. It's not just righteousness we're talking about. We're talking about perfection. And perfection is something completely different. You see, what is Tamim, as I'm thinking about people who have been called perfect in the Bible, Noah comes to mind. He was called a perfect man in his generation. Okay, that's that same word, Tam. The sacrifices that were brought to Hashem in the temple, when God requested those sacrifices, when God said, this is how I want you to worship me, they were required to be also perfect. Same word, Tam. So it says, Cholech Tamim u poel tzedek, and so that's the one who does righteousness, or the one who works righteousness, and that's pretty close. Although the idea of tzedek, righteousness, a lot of times in people's minds is not exactly lining up with what Hebrew says. Tzedek in Hebrew means rightness, as in equity, as in something that you do that makes things right. The world we live in is a terribly unfair world, a world that is full of injustice. Things are crooked, things are bent out of shape, and so when we come into the world and we fix it and we make it the way it's meant to be, when we practice mercy and kindness, when someone is dealt a very difficult lot in life and you come into their life and you practice some mercy and kindness with them, you're acting as if this is what God would have done to them. You're blessing them. What you're doing is you're creating tzedek. You're creating equity. You're evening things out, because the world we live in is so crooked and so broken. You are the agent of making things better. And that's tzedek. That's equity. That's what a lot of people call righteousness. So essentially, a righteous person, that's what they do. They work in this world to make it a better place. And then the last phrase that I find in the second verse of that psalm, and it says, Vedober emet bilvavo. And that means the one who speaks truth in his heart, literally. Speaking truth in your heart, well, obviously we do not speak in our heart. If we're talking about our heart, we're talking about our insides, okay? Levav in Hebrew, it means your inner being. Do we speak truth inside our inner being? As I think about it, that's a beautiful way of saying we don't really speak, I guess we think truth, but what we're doing is we're expressing. And sometimes I think we as human beings are so bent and so corrupt, so twisted, that we can convince ourselves of all sorts of lies. And so this type of a person that the psalm describes, he does not speak something that's untrue. He does not allow himself to dwell on the inner parts of himself. He does not allow himself to dwell on something that's not true. He reflects truth inside of him, because if what you believe is true on the inside of you, then how you're going to interact with this world and what you're going to do is going to be absolutely consistent with that. So the one person who speaks truth in their heart, inside of them, okay, that person will go outside and do other things that reflect that internal condition. So this is the kind of person that the book of Psalms says can dwell in God's place, can live on God's holy mountain and be with him. That's pretty amazing. So I'm always looking for lessons in the book of Psalms, and the lessons of righteousness and lessons of how we should conduct ourselves. And I'm never cease to be amazed how much wisdom the book of Psalms offers. Besides the fact that the book is beautiful and poetic, it speaks on a very deep level to me personally. So these are the kinds of things I like to do when I'm driving. I like to think and meditate on some passages, and my particular favorites are Psalms. So here you go. Hopefully you learned something on my morning drive. I'm just turning in now, getting to work, so I'm going to wrap this video up. Thanks for being with me this short few minutes this morning. If you like my video, don't forget to subscribe, like it, share it with your friends.